Hi everyone, my name is Jodi and I am here just to do a short demonstration on how I finish my work. Now take it for what it's worth. I just basically experiment on my own and find things that I'm happy with. So there are probably many ways to go about getting your final project finished, but this is just the way that I found that I like to use based on the materials that I'm currently working in, which are mixed media, collage, acrylic, and I use a lot of drawing mediums in my work. So what I do, here's an example of my finished piece. On the top layer of my work, and of course on some of the under layers, I use a lot of drawing media. So like all this black you'll see right in here is both chalk, pastel, and water-soluble pencils. The Stabilo black pencil is one that I use quite frequently for my work. So, of course, if you were to brush on your varnish, that would just blend all over the place. So the first thing that I do is I use a spray varnish. Right now I'm currently using the Krylon and the low order clear finish, and I buy it both in gloss and matte, and which one I use depends on what type of work I'm doing, what colors I'm using, so really a personal choice. In this particular instance, I have already spray varnished the top layers of this. So the way I do that is, of course, go outside in a well-ventilated area, and you're going to want to make sure you shake the can many times, just like you would normal spray paint, and try to go over evenly as possible. Follow the directions on here, and you want to spray. I spray across. That's how I generally do it. And then I let it dry for a couple hours, and then I'll go ahead and do it again. And depending on how many layers of the pastel or drawing media that I've used will depend on how many layers of the spray varnish I'll use. Now again, the reason why I'm not going immediately into the brushing of the varnish is because of I don't want the shading that I've done or the drawing I've done to blend too much. So this will create a barrier layer to some extent. There are always going to be exceptions to the rules. Or, if you were to do ink, I've had this question come up in a class of mine. Can you use the, and actually this applies to a more wet varnish that I use for top coats. String gel. I use that, or tar gel, depending on which brand you're using. Now, you can do multiple layers of, for you to have ink on your top layer of the spray varnish. It just may bleed a little bit because as permanent as India ink is, sometimes with a really wet application it does bleed a little bit. So that's my only caution. I've had pretty good luck with a gel medium when I use ink, and for that I use semi-gloss. It's like a soft coat gel medium. So just again, you have to experiment. My suggestion would be to try whatever you're interested in on a small piece first to see if it's going to have the outcome that you desire. Alright, so I've already went ahead and I've sprayed my varnish. Let it dry. I probably did 3 coats. Then the next thing I'm going to do is make my own semi-gloss varnish. I'm going to take Liquitex Gloss Medium. And I have actually a little container that I've mixed up that I use on a regular basis. I'm just going to do this for purposes. And I'm going to do about half and half. Just eyeballing it. And I'm making my own semi-gloss varnish in essence by mixing the gloss and the semi-gloss. Now when you're stirring this up, you'll notice that you'll have bubbles. So it's best not to do it too fast. I probably did do it too fast because that'll appear on your final layer. So you may want to, if you see a lot of bubbles appear as you're stirring, you may want to wait a little bit so the air gets out of it and the bubbles surface. But if you feel like it's in a good spot where it's not too frothy, you can go ahead and brush it on. Now for the brush, I tend to use a very soft brush where I know the bristles are not going to come out. This is just a household brush I bought for finishing. And you could either brush it on, or a lot of times I'll just pour a good deal onto my canvas. Now I like to try to have a brush handy, which I don't have one right now, of course. I like to try to have a brush handy because if I do see that my layer is blending a little bit, I can quickly, like if say this layer was starting to bleed a little bit, I can kind of push it back with my brush. So I try to do as thin a layer of layer as possible. I'm going to go, now if you want to have like brush marks on your final piece just to kind of make it look like you paint it on and that's the final, you can do that. I like to go across one way though, and down another way after it's dried. I need a little bit more. Again, just pouring it directly onto the canvas. And you're going to want to let this dry on an even surface just so that it doesn't pool. And you'll be amazed. The reason why I really started to, see I'm going in a different direction, but I'm going to finish it just trying to get all the pools of, I got it probably a little bit more than I needed just for illustration purposes. But back to my point, you'll see that once you start finishing your pieces in a varnish, it really enhances your color, it elevates your painting. And you know, as you grow as an artist, like you want to start, you know, thinking of ways that your work can be differentiated from others, and all these little details really do account for an elevation of your work. If you're looking to increase your prices of your artwork that you're selling, you know, you want to make your artwork different, and the longevity of your artwork makes a difference to your customers. Now I see just a little bit of blending over here, so this is a good example where I'm going to take my brush and just kind of push it back in, clean up those lines a little bit. It was just very subtle, but just enough where I might, if I can pull it back, I will. There we go. And some blending's okay, but you can see where a more distinct line, if you were to use ink, where that might be problematic with a brush on layer. So again, all things that you just want to kind of test out, and you know, on smaller pieces until you get the technique down. I'm using Liquitex products for this final application, but there are many products out there that I'm sure do just as well. Just a matter of what's available to you and what you like. Now what I would do next is let this dry probably for a day, and then I would repeat that process. You'll see on the sides too where it's dripped. I'll just take my brush and kind of smooth that back out. And I've been painting my sides black. Sometimes I'll carry the design, and I probably shouldn't have repainted that, I can go over it again later. Sometimes I'll repeat my design on the outside of my canvas, but other times I'll just paint it black. Just depends on my mood. I'm not really consistent in that manner. Okay, so I think it looks good. So that's that's my my next step would be just to let it dry, and dry to the touch, and then I'll repeat the process one more time. And just to kind of gauge yourself, if you did use, kind of backtrack a little bit, if you did use a lot of drawing media in your work, and you want to test out to see whether the barrier layer you've created with a spray-on varnish is actually dry enough, just rub your finger. And if you have like the color come back up on your fingers, then you know that you have not created a strong enough layer. And you can go ahead and you know, maybe do one or two more sprays of the varnish before you do your brush on coat. And this really will dramatically increase the color vibrancy of your project. So go ahead and try it and see how you like it, and continue to elevate your work with every piece that you do. And that's all I have for today, so thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.